What the heck is Microsoft Fabric? This is a question that I've been asking myself every time I see Microsoft's marketing of this Fabric stuff. I'm like, what exactly is that? It almost looks like Power BI, and I'm like, let me look into this. And I made a mistake, Will. I didn't stay in my lane. I am an expert in Canvas Power Apps, and I thought I'd dabble a little bit and tell everybody what Fabric was about. And I came across your school environment. By the way, you've got a great community on the school.com platform. That's a platform I really love. And I joined, and you graciously, you know, reached out and said, "Hey, I think maybe you got this confused with some other thing." I'm going to share my screen and sort of show everybody your community, because if you are interested at all in Fabric, I'm going to highly recommend you guys check that out. And I'm going to post this link in here. And you have a YouTube channel here.
Yeah.
But most importantly, tell us about yourself.
Yeah,
What
sure.
your background is and everything. Yeah, love to
Yeah,
hear that.
thanks very much for inviting me on. First things first, Darren. Love your channel and also your school community as well. Been having a look at that and it looks really valuable stuff. So yeah, I'm happy to talk about Microsoft Fabric. I've got the community as you just shown there. I've got the YouTube channel. So I started that channel about 9 months ago. Basically, when Fabric was first released into public preview, it was around June last year.
Uh-huh.
And yeah, I was just passionate about sharing kind of how it works through my own kind of learning and understanding how this platform works. It's kind of very relevant to a lot of the work that I've been doing in the last 8 years. So maybe we'll talk a bit more about what Fabric is in a moment, but just my own background. So I've been working in data as a data professional for the last 7 or 8, 9 years, basically. And I've been working across a variety of different industries, well, a variety of different kind of roles within that space. So did Power BI development for a bit, did data science. So I did a master's in data science and was a data scientist in a few different companies. More recently, I got more involved in data engineering. So building like data warehousing and pipelines and all this kind of stuff to move data across your organization and test and validate data. And so I've got a bit of an interesting perspective, I guess, for lots of kind of like jack of all trade type person in the data space. And then Fabric, as we can maybe discuss in a bit, is kind of like bringing all of these different skill sets and personas into one tool. So when they released that, I was particularly excited about it. And since then, I've kind of just been trying to learn as much as possible and sharing what I'm learning through the YouTube channel and the community.
Very cool. Yeah, I'd love to um, get more of a better introduction, more proper, more accurate information on this. So anything that now I'm taking a look at your channel here. Um, this looks like some really good stuff. So you've got what? Tell me about the content. So you've got tutorials. You've got. I love your thumbnails, by the way. I like this. So
Yeah,
this is
clickbaity enough.
related to obviously data, Power BI and um yeah, so tell us more about this, or if you have anything that you'd like to share on your screen, I could share your screen, or where would you like to go from here? And guys, we are going to keep an eye on the comments, so let us know if you guys have any questions as we go along here.
Yeah, sure. So just briefly on the channel. So
Mhm.
normally I work in series, or at least that's kind of how I've been approaching it so far. Because
Okay.
the thing about Fabric is it's such a vast platform. It's kind of 6 or 7 previous tools all built into one product under one umbrella. So normally I spend a bit of time going a bit deep on one particular element in Fabric for maybe a few weeks or a few months, create a series out of them, and then normally move on to the next thing. But yeah, that's how I've been working previously. So we just finished that series on the top left. So for Power BI to Fabric, because a lot of people experienced in Power BI. They've been building dashboards for a number of years. Now they've got Fabric available to them, but some of the skills and the tools available in Fabric are quite new, at least to like most Power BI developers. So the ability to create data warehouses, lake houses, data pipelines, all this kind of thing, people are really excited about learning what those possibilities can mean for them, both in their companies, but also personally, right, in their own career as well. So that's what I've been focusing on most recently. And going into the future, I did a bit of a poll on my last videos, what direction people want to see next. And
Okay.
there's a certification, the DP 600 exam. So, you know, like the Microsoft certifications, I'm sure is there a Power Apps one? I'm sure there is.
Oh yeah. Yeah, there's like a series of 4 all the way up until like an architect. Yeah.
Yeah, exactly. So I'll be probably moving into that one this week. I've just been recording some videos, how to pass that exam.
Okay.
So yeah, that's what we're going to be going through next on the channel.
Very good. Now, are there any concepts that one should know and fully understand before they could even understand what Fabric is? Like, I mean, you mentioned data warehouse, lake house. Now, I've heard of a data warehouse. I've heard of a data lake, and now I'm hearing a new lake house. What are all these things?
Yeah, well, the thing is, there's a lot of probably terminology and new concepts to explain, and probably the best place to go to if you go on videos and then popular by popular.
Okay. Yeah.
So the number one video there is the learn the fundamentals of Fabric. So I spend about 38 minutes talking you through all these different things. But just to summarize, maybe 38 minutes in 38 seconds. So Fabric as a tool is an end-to-end data analytics platform. So it's built so that you have one platform across your entire organization that manages data analytics. And this is quite innovative, really, because in the past, people would have used like Synapse, Azure Synapse, Databricks, maybe Azure
Yeah.
Data Lake, all these different tools, and they don't really speak particularly well with each other. Plus Power BI, plus you've got like real-time data. There's all these different tools available in Azure, and it basically unifies them all into one experience. So you've got things like the data warehouse, which is a bit like a T-SQL transactional database. So it's a bit like if you've
Okay.
used an Azure SQL database, similar-ish to that sort of concept. And the lakehouse is a combination between a data lake and a data warehouse. So it can
Okay.
accommodate both files and folders. So you might have a landing zone there for raw files like CSVs, JSONs, anything like that. You might dump them in the kind of the files area. And then your goal is to try to parse them, transform these files into more structured tables, right? Because when we talk about end-to-end analytics, normally we're getting data from outside of Fabric, maybe in an external system. Like maybe you have a Power App, for example. Maybe you have a Dataverse app. You've got all this data stored in external systems that you might want to bring into Fabric and then do some sort of analysis, right? So the goal really is to get data from lots of different places in your business, get them all into Fabric, do some cleaning, transformation, also a lot of functionality for like machine learning and data science as well, kind of built into this tool. So it's a very wide-ranging tool. Yeah, this is probably the good or a good introduction. There's all these 7 experiences from Data Factory, which is for primarily for like getting data in and moving data across Fabric. The Data Engineering, which is similar kind of thing. The Data Warehouse is for storing it in a structured T-SQL-like database. Data Science, also real-time analytics. So before, these were all kind of separate parts of Azure, right? And it's very difficult to, they didn't really speak together much. But now in Fabric, it's all under one tool. And the way that that's possible, maybe like one of the most important things to know about Fabric is that under the hood, everything's stored in one file format, right? So you might have heard of Delta, like the Delta format, which is an open standards format, which means that across all of these experiences, your data is stored in one file format, which basically solves a lot of like data integration issues that companies have. Because, you got like data stored in different file formats, proprietary databases like Dataverse, all these things didn't used to speak to each other. But now kind of everything's under the hood in OneLake, as it's called, is stored in one file format.
Okay. Very cool. Now, is there anything that that maybe I should click on here, or do you want to just jump in and show us what maybe you've got on your screen?
Yeah, I think that's probably a good enough kind of introduction. Probably the next stage really is to have a bit of a look, shall we?
Okay. I'm excited.
Now, I haven't actually prepared much, so
That's all good. The important part is I've got a Microsoft Fabric expert on the line here.
I'm not sure about that, but oh, what's going on here? Oh, hang on. Sorry, my thing's doing a weird zooming. Right, so yeah, when you log into Fabric here, this is basically the first thing you see. Okay, so already you get this feel for, I guess, one tool that's like an umbrella of all these different experiences, as it's called. So Power BI is now a part of Microsoft Fabric. Okay, so lots of people say, oh, is Power BI going away? What's happening to Power BI? Actually, it's just kind of been put into this umbrella of Microsoft Fabric now. So you can still do everything you could before in Power BI. And if you just want to continue using Power BI and you don't want to use Fabric at all, that's a completely like okay stance. People, you can do that if you want. You don't have to buy Fabric if you don't want it. If you just want to carry on doing what you're doing with Power BI, you can do that. So the data, so that's that one. The data factory is like we experienced there. So we can, and in each of these experiences, it's basically just designed for different personas, right? So this one is more for like data engineers, analytics engineers, and you can build data flows. So you might have seen something similar to a data flow before if you've used to Power BI. Similar to data flows in Power BI. So it's Power Query. So you can get data from a wide range of different like connectors that are built in here, like loads of them, right? So Dataverse is one.
All right.
All these different connectors all across Azure, online services, blah, blah, blah. And also other things like should have like a web API. So if you don't have a connector built for it, then you can connect via an API or OData or ODBC. It's more like generic.
That's Kurt's wheelhouse right there. So Kurt, he had just started sharing his screen and he was bringing up Fabric. And so this is really exciting stuff. So we can pull in our Dataverse, our SharePoint list. Can we pull in flat files, access data, pretty much anything, right?
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, with data flows, I think there's about 150 in total. So there's quite a big.
Yeah. Now, is this I'm sorry to interrupt in this process. Nice meeting you, and I'm happy to be here, guys. This Power Query, I just saw Power Query come up. This is the same thing that was in Power BI, right? This is the same thing, basically.
It looks
exactly. So in Power BI, you had what's called data flow Gen 1, like generation 1 of these data flows. And now in Fabric, you have generation 2.
Okay.
So it's a very similar look and feel. So you can, if you're used to using data flows in Power BI, it's pretty much exactly the same experience. There's just a few differences. So now you kind of specify, so if I get data from maybe an Excel, and you can actually upload a file as well. I'm not actually sure if I've got any. So I've just changed laptops. So
Yeah.
oh, this is a bit.
That's always a hard process. Whenever you buy a new computer or
Yeah.
have to start with a new profile. Oh my goodness, it like takes a week or two or maybe a month to get everything sort of settled in.
Yeah, no. All I've got is some sounds from like like the video editing, like swishing noises. But no, I don't actually have any data on this laptop. But anyway, yeah, the only difference really between the Gen 1 and the Gen 2 is this add data destination. So previously your data flow in Power BI was kind of like you could query it as well from dashboards, but now it's just used to get data from somewhere, transform it, and then write it out to a destination, which is somewhere in Fabric, right? So your data warehouse or your lakehouse or something like that. So yeah, if you're used to Power Query, then you can use that.
Yeah, there's a lot here that looks really familiar.
Yeah, definitely. Yeah, that's going to be very familiar if you're coming from that kind of backgrounds. The data pipeline is going to be familiar if you've worked with Azure Data Factory before.
I have not. So could you explain that just a little bit about that pipeline?
Yeah, sure.
And there's probably going to be a lot of people looking at this that never heard of that. So
yeah, absolutely. I'm actually just going to turn this off because I think my mouse has gone a bit weird. That it's moving. I don't know why. Yeah. Let me just refresh this. I'm not sure what's going on with my.
Can I ask you a question, Will? Do you offer any courses or any mentoring or anything?
So I have courses in the school community, just completely for free. I don't currently have any paid courses or paid mentoring. No, I do get quite a few people asking, but as of yet, I'm just focusing on building the YouTube and building the community.
Guys, go out there and watch all of his stuff before he starts charging for it.
Yeah, so this is the data pipeline.
Okay.
So the data pipeline is an orchestration tool. So basically you can set a schedule. So every hour, every whatever, you can set a pipeline to run. And there's a variety of different activities that you can put in your orchestration thing. So copying data is basically getting data from somewhere and storing it somewhere else. You can also use it to do things like trigger stored procedures in a database. You can invoke other pipelines. So this is like having a child and a parent type pipeline.
Okay.
You can do like Azure functions, invoke Azure functions, invoke other stuff as well, Databricks, notebooks as well. So one of the most important things in Fabric is a notebook. So if anyone's ever used an IPython notebook, it's basically a place to write Python, or Scala is another language. So you can kind of trigger that notebook to run on your data.
So this has nothing to do with OneNote, right?
No. It's like a coding notebook. Yeah, we can have a look at that in a minute.
Okay.
Yeah, so the notebook is. Let me just get a notebook. Yes, it's the notebook.
You almost needed to do a live stream on terms, on all the different terms and things, that you got all the pieces,
Well, Kurt, we were talking about that while you were away.
Yeah, the whole glossary needed. That's why I made a video of the fundamental things that you need to understand in Fabric, and it was like 38 minutes, and that was like the shortest I could get it. Because some people
Yeah.
are like, "Oh, can you do a short on this?" It's like, well, there's quite a lot to get through.
Yeah. Yeah. A lot of
Yeah.
precursors, right?
Yeah,
That's true.
that is
Yeah.
why it's tricky, because it's kind of like 6 or 7 old tools in one,
Yeah.
and each of them represents a whole industry, right? So like the data science tool, and within data science, you can go very, very, very deep if you want. Yeah, this is where you can write Python code for like data cleaning or
Okay.
experimentation, data
I think
visualization.
that's what Elvis codes in, right? Elvis, you code in Python?
Yeah, I do a bit of Python sometimes.
Okay.
So you're saying you can put code in here into this thing, and it'll automatically run that code then in that.
Yeah, exactly. So and what you can do is connect it to your lakehouse. Okay, so a lakehouse is where this data is stored.
Yep.
And then there's lots of features that help with like no and low code developers. So I know there could be
Lots of training wheels.
documents, so you can like drag and drop and then just click run. And so it runs off this thing called Spark. And Spark is like a big data processing framework. It's like very popular in like data
Now-
engineering, data science worlds. So
So
that's what this whole experience is built on top of.
so I'm sitting here looking at this lake house. I'm seeing the API entry, and then I'm seeing Spark. So Spark is a namespace that exists and through this API, right?
Exactly. Spark is the underlying like API that I'm using here, but it's kind of built into Fabric. Yeah.
Okay, it's
Now-
built into Fabric. Now that's for the low code, no code people, right? Basically.
It's more for professional coders, but there
Okay.
are like some features that are
Okay.
available for no and low code developers.
Any
notebook
chance you
really-
could zoom in on the browser a little bit?
Yeah, I did try.
Interesting.
It's going a
Oh,
bit
wow.
funny. I don't know what's happening with my.
Ah,
I would be very interested in seeing documentation on Spark
Yeah, my.
at some point, someday.
So Apache
Yeah.
Spark is like an open source framework.
Okay.
So it's this
Okay.
unified engine for large scale data analytics. And it's maintained by the Apache Foundation. So it's an open source kind of project.
okay.
But it's also what's behind, I don't know if you know, like Databricks. So have you heard of Databricks?
Nope. I mean, I've heard of it. I've never really worked with it. You know.
Yeah, so Databricks is basically the commercialization of Spark. So the people that built Spark originally in a university in America, I can't remember exactly which one, maybe UC Berkeley.
Okay.
It started as a research project and then they commercialized it into this tool called Databricks.
Okay, I got it.
But the underlying open source elements in there is still maintained, and that's what these notebooks are built on top of in Fabric as well.
So a lot of people that I talked to, including myself, really didn't even know what Fabric was about because it's like there's not a whole lot of information out there about the detail on what is Fabric. But what you're showing us today, it seems like Fabric. If we were to put a thesis on what Fabric is it is a it's big data. It's a way to play with big data, right? Pretty much.
Yeah, there's a lot of elements that are built for big data because the whole point is that I would describe it as like an end-to-end data analytics platform.
Yeah.
But able to do that, it has to be scalable because some companies have gigabytes of data or terabytes of data. And so the way that they've built it is that they've used and they've leveraged existing like big data technologies, so that the size of your data isn't really a problem. Yeah.
So Fabric would be a way of scaling, say, SQL Server to another level, maybe.
Exactly. Yeah. So the data warehouse. Oh, my thing's gone really weird now. So the data warehouse is very similar to. So let's just start or I might actually have a data warehouse already built. Metadata. This is what you would be familiar with looking like a SQL server. But actually, under the hood, it's not like a traditional SQL server. It's built on top of the Polaris engine, which is what's used in like Synapse serverless, that kind of thing as well. So it's kind of still parallelized and distributed database, which means it can scale up to like really big data sets. But in the data warehouse experience, yeah, it's like T-SQL. So you can create like scripts and functions and stored procedures and that kind of thing. If that's your jam. So typically, people might use a data warehouse to prepare data for a Power BI report. So we normally talk in terms of layers of data processing. So right from the beginning of a pipeline is where you get fresh data in, and then you might go through layers of cleaning and kind of validating, and by the end of it, you've got a nice data set that you can read into Power BI. So the data warehouse is normally used at the end of that pipeline to create like really nice data sets because they're all structured and you can read them nicely into Power BI. So yeah, there's a lot here. That's like another part of it. And obviously each of these tools is, a world in themselves. And you can, start to see a bit of, these are all the different options that you can create. Data activator is something we haven't even talked about yet. Data engineering, data factory, data science, the data warehouse, Power BI, and the real-time thing as well. So one thing that I would mention, maybe, not sure if I'm going to be able to demo it, but maybe what might be interesting for your audience is around like the integration with Power Apps and what that could look like.
Yep.
So actually, if I go back into a data warehouse, so one, actually, I'll go into let me just open up a lakehouse actually. Which one doesn't particularly matter. So in Fabric, there's this concept called a shortcut. So one of the core principles, one of the vision behind Fabric is that there should only ever be one copy of your data that exists. Because, the classic problem is, you get some data from here and it's copied over here. And then this team copies it over here. And then there's like 10 different copies of this data set and you don't really know which one's like up to date, which one you can trust and that kind of thing.
Yep.
So the idea behind a shortcut is that anywhere in kind of Azure or in the Microsoft cloud, you should only have one copy of that data and you can create shortcuts to them wherever they might be. So it might be in Azure Data Lake storage, or also in the Dataverse is another place you can create a shortcut to. So the Dataverse here is one of the shortcut locations that you can create a shortcut to. Now, I haven't actually got anything in the Dataverse, so I won't be able to create a connection. I'll see how far I can get, but
I'm interested in, again, here we are at terminology again. What is your difference between your data lake and the Dataverse? Because it's all just a bunch of tables, isn't it?
Yeah. So well, the data lake. Are you talking about these ones here?
Yeah. When you're referencing data lakes, what is the difference in that terminology between that and just tables in a Dataverse?
Yeah. Well, when I reference data lake, I talk about Azure Data Lake, which is a specific product in Azure.
Sure.
So it's basically files and folders. So similar to like Azure Blob Storage, It's kind of a very similar product. So you create a storage container in Azure
Okay.
and store like CSVs or JSONs or Parquet or these kind of files. Dataverse is, at least in my understanding, like a specific product for Power Apps and Dynamics 365, right?
Yeah.
Which is just tables as far
Just
as
tables. Yeah.
Yeah.
So you're saying it's more when you're dealing well, and I guess I was just I realize that this is an application, the Azure Data Lake Storage, but that terminology of a data lake, it's just you're talking about blob storage basically versus just tables of rows
Exactly.
and columns.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah. There's not really tables in this Azure Data Lake. It's just raw files.
A lot of files.
Yeah. Files and folders.
And then we have a whole host of products that can analyze these different files to create data analysis quickly, right?
Exactly. Yeah. So the idea is that you create a shortcut to your Dataverse, for example. Maybe you have a Power App that's built on top of Dataverse tables. You can create a connection to that, and it's basically like a live connection. So you don't need to do any sort of ETL, like extract, transform, load. You just get a live copy of your Dataverse tables within Fabric that you can then build your data science, machine learning, your whatever you want to do in Fabric. And you don't have to do this constant get the data out of Dataverse, store it into Fabric. It's just always up to date.
I'm starting to see the concept of Fabric now. So Fabric is basically like a facilitator of all these things, right?
Exactly.
It allows you to do all these jobs in between products.
Yeah. That's
Very
exactly
cool.
it. Yeah.
Very
It's
cool.
like your central location for bringing in all sorts of business data, right? You could have all of your Dataverse data, all of your Dynamics 365 stuff. You might use HubSpot, bring that in as well. You might have SharePoint data, kind of bringing it all into one place.
Okay.
Performing some sort of data analysis or data transformation, building these pipelines that get data from all these different places, put them into some sort of logical format that you can, build your Power BI or your machine learning models for predictive stuff as well.
So they're trying to build this universal platform that can go ahead and it's got a language, it's got all these different, I guess, functions and tools that allow you to access all these different things like HubSpot and all that stuff, right? Like,
exactly.
Like a big group of an API, I guess a lot of API, big cluster of APIs maybe for each individual product, maybe.
Yeah, there are APIs. There is API access as well for Fabric for more like automating like the creation of stuff. So more like infrastructure as code type stuff. It's not very well developed at the moment, the APIs.
Well, I guess where I was going with that was that in order for, like, say, HubSpot to be able to be part of this Fabric, there would have to have some kind of an API that would allow the Fabric to access that, right?
Right. Yeah. So some of the big like SaaS providers like HubSpot, they will probably already have like a connector in that data flow that we were looking at before, the Power Query engine.
Right.
Other alternatives are that for HubSpot, I know there exists like a Python library for extracting your data. It's got like a Python client library. So it gives you a really easy way to like authenticate with them. You get an API key, and they'll just say, okay, get me all of my customers in like one line of Python. So that's another option. Or you can use like a REST API, which is another way of getting data from these systems.
Right.
So there's lots of different ways, really. And it depends on where your data is living and what.
Yeah, I was just thinking, like, so when you start throwing concepts at me, I start trying to figure out how to use it, So I'm sitting here just thinking, okay, so you got this great big repository of data everywhere from virtually every program there is. So it's quite an ambitious thing here that Microsoft's doing, huh?
Very ambitious. Yeah, it's basically completely changing how business data is structured, managed, and kind of insights are drawn from it.
Yeah, and this is still kind of in its infancy stages, isn't it?
Yeah, so it reached general availability around November last year. So
Oh, wow.
only
Oh, yeah.
5 months ago. And quite a few of the features that I've showed you today are still under preview. So you can see here, like some of these are like preview. If you go through some of the other features, a lot of them are preview. Well, not a lot of them, but some of them are also still preview. So yeah, it's still very early days. People are just trying to work out like how they can fit this into their business, what their like migration strategy might be, what's possible. So yeah, it's still early days.
So here I go again with more questions. So you have Azure out here, which is Microsoft's baby.
Yeah.
But then I see you have Amazon out here with external sources. Could this be AWS that it's going to be talking to an actual competitor of Microsoft? Are these guys going to be coming together?
Yeah,
somehow?
exactly. So what's amazing about this is that you can create a shortcut to places not even in Azure, right? So if you've got data in Amazon S3, you can create this thing called a shortcut that has like a live link to your data in S3. You don't need to do that extract, transform, load thing. And Google Cloud Storage as well. So they're basically trying to make it as open as possible, right? So anywhere your data lives, you can bring it into Fabric as easily as possible. That's like the vision. Because the easier they make that, then the obviously more likely, I guess, customers are to build stuff in Fabric.
I guess my mind goes to when we're talking about big data, we're talking about controlling data. Whoever controls the data controls the world, right? So I look at these big entities out here. You got Microsoft and you got Amazon vying for control of the world here. So Azure comes along here and builds a product, or not Azure, but Fabric is a product from Microsoft that allows all these big groups like Amazon to come together. So I think I see where this is going. This is going to be now. Here's the thing. This it being in its infancy stages, there could be this would behoove people to kind of learn this, wouldn't it? The whole process.
Well, I would say yes. Yeah, I think Microsoft have already said, they're not. This is their big investment, right? This is their big bet for the next.
Really? Okay.
All of their developer resources, in terms of like data analytics, are really being channeled into Fabric.
Yeah.
Like a lot of other tools like Synapse, it's not being like deprecated, but they're not going to release any new features, is what they've said. They've got all their like firepower and talent focusing on Fabric. This is basically what they're working on now. And it shows as well, because there's new features released like every week. There's new updates. So yeah, I would definitely think this would be a pretty good place to focus your learning.
They always say there's an old adage that says the proof of any action is in the behavior. So people can say whatever they want to say, but you just watch what a person does, and that's the reality of what they really want. And you can kind of take that with Microsoft with the Power Platform. All of their energy has been put in this Power Platform. Their proof is in their behavior. The Power Platform is going to be their thing for a long, long time. And so you're saying you're taking that same concept into this Fabric. And really this is like it's their go big or go home here, right? They're saying we're going to go all in on this.
Exactly. Yeah. I mean, yeah. Pretty much, yeah. And for me anyway, the reason I'm kind of quite passionate about it is, I worked for 8 years experiencing a lot of problems that I think Fabric has the potential to solve, and like the vision is solving them.
So expound on that a little bit. What, like, because you're the expert here now, and so I've been learning a lot of terminology from you here and all that, and we could sit here and we could demo some of that stuff. But let's talk about it, because you where do you come from? What is your background, and can you talk about like what do you think that this is the tools of this?
Yeah. So my background, I'll just stop sharing there. I started out working or building Power BI reports about 8 years ago.
Okay.
And then from there, I moved into data science within an organization. So like machine learning, building like analysis, advanced analysis on mainly real-time data. So I was working for like energy companies and water companies with IoT data.
Okay.
And then most recently, I was a consultant in London around data strategy. So focusing mainly on the data engineering, building these pipelines that connect, source systems to databases and that kind of thing. And so I've seen quite a few different like angles of the industry in the data world, let's say.
Okay.
And the reoccurring theme is that data integration piece is like really, really difficult. Like getting data from lots of different systems, and
You're right.
it's so many different
Well, just
data.
just to be able to interrupt you for 1 second, I'm a developer at a smaller level than what you're talking about. Like as a program, the biggest hurdle for every program is the integration. As long as I can do everything within my software, like say Power Apps, but as long as I can do everything within that Power Apps, it's a no-brainer. But when you want to start integrating with other stuff, now there's problems. Now you got APIs, and are they going to give me permission? And blah blah blah. So you just speak right into the problem. You sure are hitting it right in the wheelhouse.
Exactly. Yeah. And not every database is different, but there's such wide variation, right? And so as a data scientist, you have to spend a lot of time just getting your data into a format that's like suitable.
Yep.
Whereas what Fabric does, I'm not sure if you're here, Kurt, when we were mentioning this, but the underlying file format is there's one file format, the Delta format.
Okay.
And so you can write T-SQL, Python, Scala, R, like all these different languages against the same data format, if you get what I mean.
Wow.
Okay.
So you can kind of bring the language and the background that you have. You might be a database developer, T-SQL guy, SQL Server background. You can use that and you can bring that and you can analyze data wherever it's stored, really, whether it's in the lakehouse, data warehouse, the KQL database is another type. Or if you're a Python person, you can come and use Python. So, and on top of that, it's not just people that can code. They put a big effort into like no and low code. So Copilot is currently being kind of threaded through all these different things. So, and like visual querying. So there's lots of different things really that make it pretty.
You brought something up about 10 minutes ago. You were talking about the IoT. You brought up IoT, and you went there. You went there with the IoT. Okay, so there are some people out here that don't have. Hold on, just a second. I got some problems.
Oh, come on, Kurt. Are you taking that call? Oh my goodness. Anyway,
nearly spat on the water.
It must have been an urgent call. He's never done that to me, so it must be an urgent call.
I heard Kurt's the king of collections.
Yeah. This is blowing my. So a lot of this is new now. From the little thing that I was trying, my failed attempt at trying to wrap my mind around Fabric. What is it about now? Pretty much the main thing that I sort of saw and that I was trying to explain was Microsoft's giving us a lot of tools and let's say Lego pieces and stuff. How much of that is Fabric? Is that maybe a small part or like an earlier generation of it?
Yeah, so I would say like a Lego brick or selection of Lego bricks is a pretty good description because Microsoft just give you all the tools, they're a bit less forefront or like forthcoming in saying how you should kind of connect all these things together.
Yeah.
So there are millions of different ways that you can build solutions in Fabric, which is part of how I see kind of the educator role, I guess, is just to show people different ways of building stuff in Fabric. But there's a lot of different ways and kind of best practice is still being kind of worked out, let's say. And a lot of it depends on the requirements of each organization, because you've got your data stored in unique locations for your company. Like you might use a specific type of database. It might be secured with a specific security profile. And so every company is different, and every company has a different set of skills as well. So if you've got, again, like a T-SQL kind of background, then the solutions that you develop are going to be different, right? So there's a lot of Lego bricks, just to go back to your questions, and how you construct them together depends on a lot of different factors.
Yeah, I absolutely love SQL Server. I've got tons of experience in it. And you mentioned that you can pull in store procedures, and yeah, that's within my wheelhouse there. But it seems to be there's a lot of things, like I brought up your slide with all the different parts of it. I've got a lot to learn about this stuff. You feel the same way, Kurt?
Yeah. I'm very sorry for the abrupt exit there. I'm fighting forest fires over here at the same time. So
sometimes those aren't figurative in Kurt's case. Sometimes they're real fires.
Yeah. No, this was a very serious phone call. I'm sorry, I had to take it, and so.
And I mentioned that, like, if Kurt took a call like that, it must have been like really important. So yeah, no worries, man.
Okay.
Yeah.
Now I don't know. I don't want to. I guess I've already interrupted the space that I just came in on. So I don't know.
No, if we could sort of rewind. So what?
Yeah.
Do you remember what you were getting at? You do? Okay, cool.
Yeah.
So
one of my goals here, Will, is within this live stream is that we get a lot of people that are brand new to this whole scene, and so I want to try to when you bring up things like the IoT, I want to break that down just a little bit so that the common person can know. I know you know what it is, and I know what it is, but there might not be.
I don't know what it is. What is it?
The Internet of Things.
Oh, okay. Yeah. Never mind. Racy.
Okay. Apologies. Yeah, I should have explained.
Well, it's okay, because these people that know a lot like you do with this stuff, you kind of assume some things that So let's go backwards to the common folks here.
Yeah, no, absolutely. Yeah, so IoT, so Internet of Things, I'm talking about.
Yep.
So within the world of data analytics, there's a few different what I would call like paradigms. One of them is batch processing. So that is, getting some CSVs. You got a day's worth of data, and you're just bringing it into your system, processing it and storing it in a database, for example. Alongside that, you've got real time, or IoT. So real-time data analytics. Instead of doing that batches, you're doing kind of a stream of data. So it's kind of like a constant stream of data that's being sent into your system. So it could be like a temperature sensor in your front room, or like a CO2 monitor in your office, right? It's always sending in data every second, whatever. And so that kind of paradigm is slightly different, and it requires a different set of tools and a different way of analyzing the data as well. Yep. And so previously, how you would have dealt with that is, well, there's a whole section of Azure for like event hubs and stream analytics. They've got all these different tools. But now that's also built into Fabric. So they've got they've got a whole experience for real-time and streaming data called the real-time analytics, surprisingly enough, experience. And so they've got some items there called like an event stream, which basically makes it really easy to kind of accept a stream of data and then route it into one of your databases or your data storage locations. So yeah, these are the different kind of paradigms, as I would call it, in data analytics, and Fabric can do both.
We do have a comment here by John. Big issue I find with techno people is teaching is they assume the audience knows most terms, language, etc. Already need to explain a bit more sometimes. Yeah. That a lot of times I say, Kurt, Kurt's excellent for this. He'll be like, hold on, explain that. Now I know a lot of times he knows exactly what it is, but I feel like Kurt's got a good sense, but that it's sort of like the curse of being a master or very skilled in a topic. You've been around it so many years, you're like, oh yeah, everybody knows how to do that, you know.
But I also want to say that I think it just the difference between me and you and me and Will is that I've been bit by it more times than you guys have. That's the only difference.
Yeah.
Because what happens is we think we know it. So it's easy for me because I know it. So you probably know it. You know, I don't want to be telling you stuff that you probably already know, you know, but we don't. And I've been bit by that many times. So, you know,
Yeah.
It happens a lot more than you think. It's hard. It's really hard for those of you that are watching this. It's hard to be in Will's position. Will's just coming in here free balling it, you know, just saying, hey, we're going to do this thing, man. And, you know, we're totally unscripted here, right? And then, you know, we're totally unscripted and it's hard, you know? So,
well, I'm hoping to hit Will up at least once a month or every once and Will just, you know, if you ever feel like talking about a topic, a live stream or anything, just let me know. Yeah,
I would really like to do the Power Apps integration piece, like the Dataverse integration.
Okay.
I think that could be a really good video for kind of crossover between my audience and your audience there.
Well,
yeah,
and go ahead.
Well, we do workshops every week. We could have a workshop on Fabric. You could run it, and you know, I'd be more than happy to pay you for that, Will, because I mean, we've got actually a lot of live viewers here, and Fabric isn't my. I'm going to be really honest, guys. Fabric's not my thing. It might be in the future, you know, but I'm going to defer to you know, someone like yourself, Will. On this. So if people love what they've seen here, they want to know more, obviously they need to subscribe to your YouTube channel, go to your school because you have everything laid out really nice there. They can ask you questions in your school environment. And
it's free too, right? The school environment's free too, right?
Yeah.
Okay.
Absolutely.
Okay.
Yeah, no, I think that's probably the best kind of strategy. Yeah. I've got about 50 videos on YouTube to kind of get you started, understand some of the core concepts. A lot of what I've been going through at the moment is kind of like foundational level. Just want to get people off on a good foundation.
Absolutely.
You can go very deep on some of these topics, but that's maybe in the next few months or years even. Once I've got that solid foundation.
He was talking about having a workshop on Fabric. It sounds like there needs to be many workshops on Fabric. And I want to say, you know, jump in to our community. Anything that you think would be a good resource for people like me who are really fascinated by the idea but don't know the first thing about it. They want to get into it. Because I'm a developer and I believe I'm pretty good at data. I believe that this might be the place to go in 5 years. We're going to be obsolete if we're not doing this. If we're not part of this in 5 years, we're going to miss the boat, you know? So I would like to be part of that.
One last question for you, Will. Where are you at with the whole AI scene, Copilot, all this type of stuff? Are you just as much into that, or is that maybe your interest isn't there? Or what's your take on AI, Copilot, and all this stuff going on these days?
Well, yeah. Well, my background is AI and machine learning, so I'm like very into that. Did a master's degree in data science and machine learning. So that's kind of like my background, let's say. So I'm very into it, have been for the last 6 years or so. And especially around the Copilot thing's a little bit different because it brings a whole new audience to that technology.
Yeah.
And it's really, really interesting for me bringing that into Fabric and basically giving people, business users, the tools to build analytics, scripts with like natural language. It basically makes data analytics a lot more accessible to business users. And that for me is very exciting. And one of the reasons I'm pretty positive on Fabric, because they're building it into every experience, every tool in Fabric is going to be basically accessible to Copilot. So yeah, very excited about it, to be honest.
Well, fantastic. So ask the question, both of you. Any closing thoughts? And I've got a closing thought after you guys go. Kurt, do you have any closing thoughts?
Well, I just wish I didn't miss so much of it. I had to miss some of the, so I'm really sorry. It's really good to meet you. And I think that you, I think this is a fast, I was at first, before I started this thing, I was like, Fabric, whatever, and now I'm thinking, oh my goodness, this could be really, really big. So this is, I hope that we see more of you. I think you're going to be seeing me popping into your school environment from time to time, because
come over. Yeah,
I love to learn.
bunch.
Yeah, I love to learn, man. I wish I was a data scientist, So,
yeah, it's pretty cool, man. Yeah. Well, yeah, the first time I kind of had that experience with Fabric was just before it was really released back in May, and then since then I've quit my job. I'm all in on Fabric now. I trying to build this kind of YouTube channel and community, and it's kind of what I'm focusing on because of that strength of feeling about the platform and kind of what I think it could be in the future.
Absolutely, very cool.
Well, my closing thoughts is what video should you guys be watching next, huh?
Guys, for some reason, YouTube thinks you're going to like this video next. Let's see if they're right. Or you can select this playlist, which I've selected for you based on the content you're currently watching. Guys, gotta hurry. Click one of them. Otherwise, YouTube's going to autoplay some other video.